This story was shared with me by an acquaintance of mine, and here's what she told me. Children see much more than adults. Everyone has known that for a long time. But who or what my son saw, I was terrified at the time. I see a lot of things myself, so it's hard to scare me. I didn't even realize that a nasty, sticky, and paralyzing fear could come to me. A little bit about our house to make it clearer. My husband and his two acquaintances on the 4th kilometer outside of town bought a huge piece of land. They each built a store. Our building is 1,000 square meters in 3 levels: basement, warehouse, and 2 floors for the store. And after that, so that everything was close to each other, my husband built a house on top. That's what they do in Greece. I did not like this idea at once. I do not like large areas. Besides, I felt something there all the time, but also saw and heard. But now, it's not about that. This is another story. At the age of 1.5, my son didn't talk much, but he could get the point across. And one morning he started running around the house with his head cocked up, pointing his finger at the ceiling, laughing and saying, "Bird." And Bird appeared in the farthest room, where my husband and I slept. There was also a crib. Son ran around the room in circles like a pony in the zoo, and then ran to the corridor and the hall. There he made a couple or 3 circles and then reported that the bird had flown away. I was struck by the way he laughed as he ran after the bird, such a pure, hearty laugh. I asked questions and wanted to understand what the bird looked like, but all I could get out was that it was big and white. In addition, the child depicted what the bird did with its wings. The bird was replaced by Alipus. My child comes up to me one day, makes round eyes and whispers to me, "We have an Alipus living at home." Not Alipus, but Alipu. I corrected, Alipu in Greek, a fox. No, Alipus, he looks like a fox in the face with teeth, but he is not a fox. Alipus is bad. He wants to bite me with his teeth. When did he ever bite you? All the time, he rarely leaves. Then my son would say that Alipus bit him, and sometimes he would start crying and say that he was afraid of him and demanded to send him away. But my mom, when she came to visit, this animal grabbed her arm in the middle of the night. Well, my mom is not a timid person. She said a prayer and kicked the Alipus out. In the morning, all resented that the mark on the hand remained, spoiled her appearance, and that the beast woke up in the middle of the night, in the ear puffing, and she, by the way, her blood pressure. I didn't tell her anything so as not to bother her, so she told me and described it to me. It looked like a fox, but not quite. Something was wrong, and the teeth are sharp. As she reported to me this morning, "Your doggy bit me, or a fox, I don't know. It's a laughing matter." This story went on until I was about 4 years old, and then I wanted Alipus to come back, but not this. I started noticing that when I talked to him, he looked away from me. It's like this all the time. I got nervous and I asked him, "Where are you looking?" My son jabbed his finger to my right. "There's the second mummy!" Honestly, I felt goosebumps run from my feet to my ears, and then I felt the hairs on my head stirring nastily. Hiding my head in the sand like an ostrich, I decided to skip the subject, but it didn't work. From that day on, I kept hearing about second mummy. For example, if I said that you cannot hang from the railing on the balcony, my son objected. "But the other mommy lets me, and she gets mad at you when you fight." Everything I said, she turned it upside down. "Why is that aunt who comes to see you second mommy? She has your face and everything, only she's mean." Why is she mean? Her face is mean. The final straw in this story was that this entity showed my son where the key that is used to remove the plugs from the outlets is hidden. It's for child safety. And then, according to my son, the second mom showed him how to stick a nail into the outlet. As a result, the child was electrocuted 2 times. Well, without consequences. Before that, my son was not attracted to sockets, and the key to the plugs was lying so high that I could not get it without a chair. How did it get to the child? I had to summon all my strength and make this mommy disappear forever. I wasn't sure what it was, but my son said it didn't live in the house. It was out there, and pointed to the fields. We have farms all around us. So I didn't know if I had succeeded or not. But it didn't take long for the answer to come. My son walked up, eyebrows pushed to the bridge of his nose. "Why did you kick the other mommy out? A, why me? When she left, she told me that her first mommy kicked her out. You kicked her out, and she won't come back. There she is, she's leaving, she's far away. The son had his nose in the glass he was watching. He saw. I didn't even look, I didn't want to see if she'd come back.
Horror from a laptop. If you ever think about recording yourself while sleeping, think again, or better yet, just forget the idea. This happened 7 years ago when I was a typical first-year college student. Actually, this isn't even my story, but there's no one else left to tell it. There was a girl who studied with me. She was a top student, pathologically honest, the pride of her parents. You get the idea. She was some sort of distant relative of mine, maybe a third or fourth cousin. Her parents rented a small one-room apartment for her in our city, and she lived there quietly. One weekend, something strange happened. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but later I realized I should have. I remember that day and hour as if it was yesterday. She came running over at about 9 in the morning, tears streaming down her face, shaking from sobbing and unable to calm down. Only after about 40 minutes did she manage to collect herself and tell me what had happened. It turned out she had a secret hobby, reading scary stories, watching creepy videos, that sort of thing. Before going to bed, she set up a camera in front of her bed, hoping to catch something unusual. Then she started telling me about something strange. At first, I thought she might have taken something she shouldn't have, being away from her parents' control, but now I really regret not believing her. So, she transferred the video from the camera to her laptop and started watching it. At first, she was just tossing and turning in bed. Then, according to her, she looked away from the screen for just a couple of seconds to swat away a fly or something like that. When she looked back at the monitor, she felt chills run down her spine. In the video, she had lifted her head and was looking at the camera with a surprised expression. She described it as wide open eyes, raised eyebrows, but with a completely smooth forehead and a slight smile. Like a cat looks when it sees something tasty in your hand, she said. The unusual thing about the face was that the pupils were very large, so large that you could barely see the irises. She kept looking at the screen for several minutes, not blinking or moving. My cousin thought the laptop had frozen and the frame was stuck, but then she noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. She had dark hair and a short haircut at the time, with one strand dyed bright purple. But now she saw that strand around the neck of the other her, the one looking into the camera, which was impossible because it was too short. It was as if her head was resting peacefully on the pillow, but something else was perched on top, looking into the camera. Before continuing her story, my cousin stuttered and trembled for a few minutes, asking me if I would think she was crazy if she told me, and if I would tell anyone else. I promised her I wouldn't think that, and I wouldn't tell anyone. She swears that what happened next was what caused her hysteria. Her own face, which had been staring at the camera with huge pupils for about 10 minutes, suddenly stretched vertically in just a couple of seconds. The mouth opened unnaturally wide. She said you could fit a fist in there. And the lower jaw moved to the side, creating a shape like the letter C with her face. She immediately closed the video player window and, here she continued telling the story through sobs, saw that the horrifying, distorted face was now her desktop background. She rushed to delete it and saw that all the images were replaced with this horror. And instead of music in all the files, she said there was some kind of hissing with a barely noticeable disturbing knock in the background. I told her to calm down and decided to go to her place and clean her computer of viruses. She agreed right away, and we went to her apartment. Everything was just as she said. The horrifying images were on her desktop. Honestly, when I first saw it, I got scared too. But I didn't show it. Someone had to deal with the situation. I thought someone must have photoshopped her face as a prank. I spent about half an hour removing all those horror images from her computer. She said nothing like that ever appeared again after that. About a year went by with nothing unusual happening. She gave up her experiments with the paranormal after that incident. It seemed like the story was behind us. But sometime later, she called me with a trembling voice, saying it had come back. I didn't understand what she meant at first, but she reminded me of the video and the images. This time, she was at a bachelorette party at a friend's house, and they later showed her photos from the event. She said that in all the photos where she appeared, that same face was there again. Surprised, with a slight smile and huge black pupils, even though everyone else in the photos had red eye from the flash. I brushed it off, thinking her nerves were shot after that incident, and told her not to pay attention to it, that the photos couldn't harm her. I was also really into a girl at the time, so I didn't have much time to listen to her. Don't like the photos? Delete them, that's all, I said and hung up. I'm writing this 3 years after the events described above. I didn't do anything then, and went out with the girl I was interested in, something I now deeply regret. My relative was found dead in her own bed a few days later. She was completely gray-haired, and everyone who saw her said her eyes were almost round with terror, and her face was covered in dried tears. Her apartment door was slightly open. At first, everyone thought someone had broken in, but everything was in order, and there were no signs of a struggle. The door had been scratched and opened from the inside. I thought about what happened for a long time and couldn't sleep at night. I became somewhat paranoid, thinking something might happen to me too. She was buried 6 months ago, and yesterday I received a photo from that party from an unknown address. She was looking at me with those huge pupils, smirking.
The elevator of the dead. It was just recently, and after this story, I am a little afraid to ride the elevator in the house where my grandmother lives. The 17-story house was one of the tallest houses we had, and there were rumors that it was built on some ancient cemetery. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but everything happens. There are 2 elevators in this house, a regular one and a freight elevator. Something happened to the freight elevator, and that's why only the regular elevator worked. On it, I went up to the floor I needed, sat at my grandmother's house, drank tea, and here I'm going home. I called the elevator, but it was always occupied by someone. I hear that someone rides it, goes out, someone else comes in, etc. I was getting pissed off and was thinking of walking when suddenly the freight elevator opens. Oh, they fixed it apparently, I thought, and got in. The elevator took a long time, and for some reason it stopped on the 6th floor, and just as it opened, it closed again and froze. No matter what buttons I pushed, it wouldn't move. I'm stuck. I started banging on the elevator doors. Knock, knock, knock. Nothing. Well, I guess I'm in trouble. Then the elevator light starts blinking and goes off. At the same second, all the buttons on the panel light up, and I suddenly heard a strange whisper, as if calling someone by name. And you can't distinguish whether it's a man's voice or a woman's. That's when I got scared, because together with the whisper, I heard a scraping sound from under my feet, as if someone was scratching the elevator from below. I yelled and kicked at the door, and at that moment the light in the elevator turns on, and I go down to the 1st floor. I run out of the elevator and rush to the janitor. "Why are you so scared?" she asks me. "Yes, I got stuck in your elevator. Half an hour in it." "How stuck?" "The elevator works." "That one might." "I'm stuck in the freight elevator." That's when the janitor got scared, and when I asked her, "What's the matter?" she said, "The freight elevator hasn't been in the shaft for 6 months."
Do you like scary stories? Subscribe to our channel and give us a like so you don't miss new creepy stories. Join our community of horror lovers.